So we've made it, everybody. After 10 weeks, we finally made it to the season finale of Servant. I had my theories. You all had your theories. We had a 32-minute runtime season finale. Did we get all of our questions answered? Well, we're going to talk about that and much more. Episode 10 of Servant was titled Ballon. After Jericho's baptism, uninvited guests force difficult decisions. What's going on, everybody? Elliot back again for season 1 finale of Servant, episode 10, titled Ballon. Very excited to talk about the season finale with you all in this spoiler discussion. Before we dive into it, for those that are new to this channel, definitely consider subscribing to my channel. Hit that bell so you can stay up to date with all my TV reviews, movie reviews, trailer reactions, unboxing, giveaways, and all the fun things we do on this very channel. If and when you've seen this season finale, I want to know what you thought of it. Were you disappointed? Were you excited? Did you get all your answers, your questions answered in this finale? I want to know your thoughts in the comments below. So first and foremost, you probably all noticed a little bit of a different setting here. After 3 years, I moved out of my old place and I'm into my new place. So, I'm definitely in an adjustment mode. So please, bear with me with the lighting and the setup here. I'm going to settle into this new place and get my setup all organized for you all in due time. But let's just jump into this finale review here. So first and foremost, I don't know if you all watched my review last week. Check it out. But I had mentioned, one of my first things I had mentioned was Sean's going to do something with that placenta, and I'm surprised he didn't make a dish out of it. Well, lo and behold, he does make a kind of a dessert dish, and I just thought that was kind of funny because I was like, I know Sean, he's going to end up making something out of the placenta, but we see that moment there. Let's continue to break down this episode. We see Leanne runs home from to this party they're having after this baptism. We see that Toby's there as well, getting everything together, and it looks like they invited the whole town because everyone starts to come into the party. You got people from Dorothy's job, like I think her name is Elizabeth, the new anchor that's coming in. You got people that we've never seen before. I assume these are Dorothy and Sean's friends. Who knows who these people are? But we see them coming in, and we see that Leanne notices that baby Jericho is kind of being handed off to different people. There's a woman holding baby Jericho, and she seems a little concerned. Again, we know that she's kind of having her reservations about Dorothy, and especially about her taking care of Jericho. So we see that. We see Dorothy kind of mingling with people, and we see her talking about her 11-hour labor, and we see that she notices the door slowly opens, and then a little girl is holding a doll, and there's an Amber Alert that goes off on everyone's phone. And it's at that moment where you're starting to get the pieces of the puzzle that Dorothy is starting to remember things and maybe starting to wake up out of that sleep that we all know that she's been in this whole season. And after finding out what happened to baby Jericho last week, we all know that there's going to be eventually she's going to wake up from that sleep that she was in regards to just being in shock to what happened to baby Jericho. So we hear one of the people in the crowd say, "Oh, I remember when I lost my son at a store or something for 11 minutes." They thought that they were gonna die at that moment. And again, it was just little hints of Dorothy just kind of remembering things. So from there, we see a kind of a playback. Someone recorded the baptism, and Julian and also Leanne noticed that in the background you can see Uncle George and Aunt May, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit. Dorothy sees a little girl kind of wander off upstairs, and they had a kind of a conversation there, and Dorothy asks to hold the little girl's doll, and that's again Dorothy starting to remember things. We see that she slowly drops the doll on the ground as the little girl's kind of like, "Hey man, you dropping?" I think her doll's name was Pamela. I thought the little girl was going to maybe pull a Leanne on her and maybe drag Dorothy's hair down like Dorothy did, or Leanne did Natalie a couple weeks ago. But we kind of see that moment again. This whole episode was setting up the idea of Dorothy waking up and remembering things and things of that nature. And we're going to continue to talk about that here in this breakdown. We see Julian telling the investigator that if he sees George around the place, use his imagination, and particularly use his car to run over George. As the investigator says, "I don't want to go to jail to do that." I thought that was kind of a funny moment there. Natalie talks to Leanne once again and finds out that Dorothy does know what happened to baby Jericho, and that once Dorothy wakes up from the sleep, she's going to blame everyone, including Leanne. And I thought that was a really interesting moment. And we also see a really interesting moment here. The placenta is served to the guest, and everyone seems to love it, but they don't know exactly what they're eating. Again, Sean and his cooks and everything about this show in regards to Sean and his dishes, they have been I can't think of the word, but a very interesting choices of what he decides to make dishes out of. But anyway, guys, Leanne goes looking for Jericho, and she finds Aunt May holding the baby and looking just as creepy as Uncle George did a couple weeks ago when he was holding baby Jericho. Very creepy family. We find out more about this family here. So speaking of Uncle George, we see that he's meeting Sean for the first time in person in the basement. Sean is ready to go. He's not ready to have these weird, awkward conversations. He's like, hey, man, I got what you want. I got $86,000, I think was the amount of money that he was giving him. But Uncle George does not want his money. And we see him ask Sean if he knows who he has welcomed into his house, speaking to Leanne. So we see we get this back and forth kind of scene between Sean and Uncle George talking, and we get Aunt May and Leanne talking. They cut between these two different shots within like a 5 to 7 minute run. So we see Aunt May and Leanne talking, and Aunt May asks, what did Dorothy do to baby Jericho? And we kind of have that conversation. George tells Sean that after the fire, it was just easier to go along with the idea that Leanne had died. So him and Aunt May raised Leanne in Pennsylvania as God instructed them to do. He talks about the time Leanne met Dorothy a long time ago, as we all know from episode 3 or 4, where we saw that Dorothy did indeed meet, or I should say Leanne did indeed meet Dorothy when she was a little girl at a beauty pageant, and that's where that kind of connection, they kind of have that callback there. And Leanne likes to please people she loves, but likes to hurt ones that she doesn't. I thought that was a very interesting line there, because that kind of plays into the ending that we'll talk about in a little bit here. So back to Sean, and going back to the conversation that we have there with Sean and everyone. So we see, or I'm just saying, Aunt May and Leanne, Dorothy, she was meant to suffer, and she tells her that she's the kind of that Leanne tells her that she's a kind person, and that it was an accident, but Aunt May warns her that she's going to not only hurt the baby again, but she's going to potentially hurt Leanne. So again, those are just kind of seeds being planted for Leanne to do what she did at the end of the episode here. So again, back to Sean and George. He asks, what is it that you want to be done, and what has she done to you? And that's where Sean tells George about the splinters and not be able to feel things and taste things. Julian kind of steps in, and Sean's like, no, I want to continue to have this conversation. That's where we see Sean kind of have a little breakdown there, an emotional moment. He just wants his son back. He wants Jericho back, and he wants him to stay. More from Aunt May and Leanne. Discussion, we learned we learned a very interesting thing in this conversation here. We learned that they help those in need, but Leanne has changed since she's been around Turner, and we all kind of know that from, this whole season, really, that she's really kind of latched on to Dorothy and Sean and really wants to be there, but they serve people. And what matter, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And we see we see that Dorothy walks in, takes Jericho with him, and that's where we see Aunt May tells Leanne that come morning time, you both need to come home, and by the morning it's gonna all be over. No more games, no pretending. We're gonna take baby Jericho and you with us, and this whole foolery that's going on is gonna be ending really soon. So we get a speech from Dorothy's dad, which I thought was a pretty heartfelt speech. He kind of mentioned about being a parent and what goes into being a parent. And then, all the things, you're going to make mistakes. So I thought it was a really nice speech from her dad that we've only met once this season thus far. So knock, knock. We get police coming at the door. And that's at that moment where I'm like, did Aunt May and George maybe set up Sean and Dorothy that they kidnapped this baby? But no, the police are there for the Amber Alert that went off early in the episode. The girl that Dorothy was speaking to with the doll, she actually kind of followed the party from the baptism, and she was there. So that was I was like, oh my goodness, are they going to put him in jail? But no, that did not happen. So we see that there's a storm brewing in the town, and Sean tells Julian that he now believes in Leanne and now all the stuff that's going on. And this is the first time, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, this is the first time that Sean is actually believing everything that Leanne is doing, from the splinters to bringing baby Jericho back to life. He's now a believer. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time that Sean's actually said those words in this season thus far. So we see Sean and Dorothy looking over baby Jericho, and this is where we hear Dorothy saying, how can I had given birth to something so beautiful? I don't believe this is true. And again, the wheels are spinning. She's starting to realize this isn't true. This isn't your baby. And again, this is what this whole episode's about. So we see the investigator. He's looking outside, and that's where he sees Aunt May in front of his car, and he goes out of his car, and that's where Uncle George is behind him. We unfortunately don't find out what they do to the investigator. We don't know if they killed him, knocked him out, kidnapped him. Who knows? We're going to talk about what these people do here in a bit. So we see Toby walks by the car and we see that investigator's gone. Dorothy looks through some old recordings. She's starting to recollect because early in the episode, Dorothy's like, I've met you before, Aunt May, but I don't remember where. But that's where we see Dorothy put the tape in. I'm thinking that Dorothy was putting the tape in to maybe see if she met Leanne before, but no. I don't know when she did this, but there was an old clip where we see Dorothy kind of doing this news report on this kind of kidnapping that's going on, and kids are being held at gunpoint, and it's being led by this cult following, and the cult was called the Church of the Lesser Saints, and the leader of this cult, or I assume to be the leader of the cult, is no other than Aunt May. And that's where I'm just like, oh, wow. So we got a cult involved. You know, maybe they're not as nice or maybe as kind as we all thought that they were, as far as Leanne being a servant. As we see Aunt May call Leanne, you're our servant. You're not theirs. So very interesting reveal there. Dorothy runs to Leanne's room where she finds that Leanne is no longer there. We get a kind of a quick, and we see that Leanne is walking out of the house with a bag, which I assume maybe baby Jericho, the real baby's in there. And she has a balloon, which I don't know if that balloon goes back to the episodes a couple weeks ago where we saw Sean making that Swedish dish. I don't know if that has any correlation with one another. But we get a quick flashback of Dorothy when she walks into the room when she sees the people taking her dead baby out. And again, things are starting to come together. We see next that Dorothy's in the streets, surrounded by a bunch of people. I assume that's the cult, the Church of Lesser Saints people. I assume that's who that was. We then see what happened after the kidnapping, the clip that Dorothy was watching. It was a big explosion. I assume that everyone died, maybe. I don't know. The next thing we see is Uncle George and Aunt May and everyone in the, again, the cult that I assume to be the cult, to hug Leanne. We see a quick shot of a police officer driving by that and seeing that and you know, going back to the scene, and when he goes back, everyone's gone. Very interesting moment. Let me know your theories on that in the comments below. Back into the house, Dorothy finds the doll. The damn doll is back in the crib. Baby Jericho is gone. She drops it and it fades to black. And I immediately say, what the hell was that? I'm not gonna lie. This is kind of my thoughts on the episode. You know, we got some answers. We find out about the cult. We find out that now Sean is a believer. We find out now that Dorothy's starting to come back and recollect what happened that day and waking up out of that sleep, I guess you can say. Julian and Natalie seem to be a real thing now. And that's about it. You know, all the theories that I've had about maybe Leanne being a witch, maybe her being an angel, which can still be the case. I don't know. The whole cult being a thing and disappearing in thin air. I'm not going to lie. I had a really long day. You know, I've been packing for the last, 12 hours. So I might have missed something, guys. Let me know in the comments what you're thinking of all this. You know, the Church of Lesser Saints people. Who are these people? What's going on with Leanne, Uncle George, Aunt May? Are they dead? Are they alive? Are they a cult that worships the devil, that worships God, and they're doing good things and not really doing good things for good people? I don't know. I'm kind of lost at this point. Overall thoughts, though, of the season. This season finale, before I go into my overall thoughts of the season, I'm kind of disappointed because, again, I wanted a little bit more. I know you all have been mentioning in the comments. I read all your comments, and I appreciate all the comments you guys leave. But a lot of people was like, it's going to be a cliffhanger. They're not going to answer all of our questions. We're going to have to wait to season 2 to find out, what's really going on in the situation with Leanne and her, her cult now, or her being a part of a cult. So we got to wait to season 2. Now, as far as, like I said, I'm disappointed by the season finale, unfortunately. But as a season, I was invested. I watched all 10 episodes. I reviewed all 10 episodes. I like the tones, the what they were trying to convey about parenthood and tragedy and trauma and hiding trauma and what loved ones would do to keep those afloat. What we saw Sean do to try to not only help Dorothy out in her situation, but also kind of help himself out, because again, we've had a lot of conversations last week in the comment section about Dorothy, at least I did, about Dorothy and Sean, the idea of being parents, but not actually executing, being real, good parents. And we saw what happened to Baby Jericho, and what happened with Dorothy was definitely unfortunate. And a lot of us, like myself, was saying that Dorothy wasn't ready for it, and I put just as much blame on Sean as I do Dorothy, because Sean, it's like, man, your wife and you and your wife has had all these miscarriages, and as soon as you guys actually have a baby that's alive, you go out of town and do this show thing. So it's a lot that the show had to offer. The first half of the season, we met Sean. We got, about 3 episodes with Sean. We finally got to spend time with Leanne. We met Julian for a bit, and obviously finished up with Dorothy. So I like the show. I'm very interested to see where season 2 goes, but I'm hoping that they give us more. I hope that they don't drag things on. They don't leave us wanting more. And of course, it's fun to theorize and have these awesome conversations with you all. But I hope that season 2 definitely gives us more answers sooner rather than later. So overall, I enjoyed the season. Disappointed by the finale. But I want to know what you all thought of the season as a whole. What were some of your favorite moments, your favorite characters? What are the things you didn't like about the season? What were your thoughts about the season finale? Let me know in the comments. Give this video a thumbs up. Really helps out the channel, guys. Follow me on all my social media accounts. You can find that in the description below. Again, comment on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Again, I'm going to be getting this place put together here sooner rather than later. But again, for all those that have watched all my servant reviews, I really appreciate the support. This isn't my last review. I always review TV shows, movies, trailer reactions, unboxings, and giveaways. So definitely continue to watch this channel. I have content coming out 5-6 times a week. So definitely, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. So thank you all again for watching this video, and we'll see you on the next one.